The first season of All the Queen's Men came to an end with a finale that found Amp losing blood after being shot on his Auntie Madam's front porch. And this left us wanting more, of course. This was, in fact, the perfect cliffhanger. Season 3 of All the Queen's Men returns to BET Plus, streaming on Thursday, July 20th. Now, I'll be dropping the highlights from Season 2, just in case some of us forgot what the hell happened. No spoilers, please. No spoilers in the comments. I've only watched up to episode number 4 of the second season before I decided to give commentary on the highlights. So no spoilers, please. So let's get started, shall we? Now, the only thing that Amp wanted to do when he left jail was to go to the halfway house, find a decent job, and make some extra money. And he only had 90 days to do it. But instead, he ended up being on the main stage at an exotic upscale men's strip club, Club Eden. Fell in love with the DJ, and now he's laid up in the hospital after being accidentally shot by the owner of Club Eden, Madam, his auntie. The way that things ended on season 1, I must say that the writers did a good job of revealing that Amp could very well be dead, but he survived. And what was interesting to me in this whole time after him being shot is that Amp was nervous. He was really nervous. He was scared, bleeding out. He's traumatized. But Madam is smoking a cigarette, right? Telling him to man up and to stop acting like a little because she only shot him using her .22. If you guys relook at this scene, it's really quite comical. Now, Amp has very limited care at this point. He really couldn't go to the hospital, not with a bullet lodged right below his heart. He'd have a lot of explaining to do, not only to the doctors, but also to Bill, the HNIC at the halfway house. So unfortunately, this alone narrowed down his options, leaving him susceptible to letting Dr. Tommy and Nurse Madam perform this bootleg surgery to remove the bullet. And in this moment, he had no other choice but to trust his auntie to think for him while his life lay dangling in Tommy's hands. And while he's performing surgery to remove said bullet, business still had to be handled and money had to be moved. So Madam decided to place a phone call to one of her other flunkies. She instructed him to go to a specific address to pick up a girl. And this girl ended up being the daughter of the Rosses, the judges, which is a whole other video. And I'm sure that we'll talk about them sometime during the countdown before season 3 airs. Before we move on, let me just say that although Madam appears on the surface to be a little bit foo-foo, she still knows how to handle business, even in the midst of her nephew lying there, dying on the table 10 feet in front of her. She has an army of God knows how many soldiers who are nothing but loyal to her, and I'll get more into that when I cover Madam's video. But the series creator, Christian Keys, he did a fantastic job outlining the characteristics of this character. She is indeed a very complex woman, which may make it a little bit difficult for her to learn lessons or undergo any type of major transformative experiences. Although the fact that one of the main supporting characters in this series, Amp, he has a life-threatening injury, and it has us on the edge of our seats waiting to see what's going to happen next. But the drive on the way to the hospital with Tommy was just not that serious to him. Tommy sat there and nibbled on cookies while Amp was begging for some type of relief. Madam even gave them a call on the way to the hospital to ask Amp for the address to the halfway house. Madam knew that regardless of what was happening, that she had to move quickly if she wanted to see any part of that $2 million back that Red stole, which is now the perfect segue into the second highlight of episode number 1. Red. Red was one of those characters who was just annoying for no fucking reason. He did a lot of creepy things around Amp. Like he'd watch Amp while he was asleep. He practically begged him to put in a good word for him with his aunt about working at Club Eden. And his goal the entire time was to rob the place and then have everyone pin the blame on Amp. Now, Red and Bill, the HNIC at the halfway house, they've been in cahoots for a minute. Red looks up to Bill like a big brother, or almost a father figure to some degree. And I judge this just from what we could gather from past escapades that these two had, setting up other members of the halfway house, sending them back to jail, and all these other bogus shenanigans. But now they hit the mother lode, and Red relies on this fool to basically tell him what their next moves are going to be. He calls himself the brains of this scatterbrain operation, and Red must be the muscle. I mean, he makes it all happen. Basically, he's Bill's flunky. And we know that there is no honor amongst thieves, period. But they talked about how unbelievable it was that they had all of this money and they fantasized about what they were going to do, what they were going to buy, and where they were going to go. While they're celebrating, the mistrust was now at an all-time high. Red suddenly felt sick, and by the time he figured out that Bill had set him up, he tried to hit him, tried to take him down, but it was too late. Bill had put something in his beer to make him lose control and to go to sleep. He stole the money and then he left. Did y'all catch the fact that when Bill left Red's room, he warned the other men in the house not to come into Red's room because he was on punishment? What? Okay, I'll reserve my comment on that one, but little did Bill know with this newfound freedom, it came with a host of other problems, Madam type problems. So, Madam and Blue made their way over to the halfway house. And what I appreciated really about this scene was how it revealed even further how heartless Madam is and how out of control she could get due to her impatience. This character is ruthless. She's dangerously spontaneous, and the writer had to drill this into our heads. And this scene supported the true nature of this character, where she entered a house full of deaf mutes and she just shut up everybody in the room. If this wasn't a clear indication of how heartless Madam could be, then I don't know what is. Her and Blue made it up to Red's room, and long story short, Red gave up Bill's name, but that wasn't enough for Madam. She had to leave her calling card by taking him out in a way that they know that she'd been in the building. She made Blue tie him to the chair, placed the bomb between his legs, turned it on, and then they walked out. We now know that begging for your life doesn't matter. By the time you reach this point with Madam, it's already too late. Now, this concludes the highlights from episode 1, season 2 of All the Queen's Men. And in conclusion of this highlights review, Eva Marcille does a great job at bringing Madam to life and all of her deadly situations. It seemed to have some sort of lasting impact on viewers, keeping us tuned in episode after episode. Now, if you need to be refreshed on the highlights from season 2, be sure to stay tuned for day 15 of the countdown as we grow closer and closer to the premiere of season 3 of All the Queen's Men. Now, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. You know I'd appreciate it. And if you're a fan of Christian Key's All the Queen's Men, go ahead and sub to the channel for more videos just like this one. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Ruthless TV, you guys, and I'm going to see you on the next one.